And a good hump day Wednesday here on an OTA week for the Philadelphia Eagles on Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys here, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, ready to hang with you for the next couple hours. Johnny Mac in a busy day in Philly sports yesterday. Flyers make a big trade. Phillies win their fourth consecutive game. The Eagles grabbed attention too by making a bunch of players available. They're in the midst of week 2 of their the OTAs. No mandatory stuff. So tomorrow you get a chance to take attendance and see who is or isn't there for the Eagles. But we know a bunch of guys who were. A couple of veterans who spoke yesterday. They kind of split it up positional groups. 2 offensive linemen, 2 running backs, and a coach. Biggest name of which was Lane Johnson. And Lane talked about the future, not only this upcoming year, but where his career is taking him from here. It sounded to me like Lane's not planning on going anywhere, Johnny Mac.
No, he did throw a little, he mentioned to us last year that he was thinking about 2 more years after last year, which would be 2023 and 2024. He signed the extension as he typically does, which is more, he basically gets his money up front and a little bit added on, and the Eagles get some salary cap relief. They've done that so many times with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you look at his deal on paper, it's 2026 really. And he was asked, is this your last contract? And he said yes. And then later he mentioned he thinks he's got a couple good years left in him. So Lane's 33. I think he's rapidly coming to the point where we are with Jason Kelce when it becomes year to year with him. So I think when you get through 2024, which is in his mind, a couple good years, then it comes into where is he? Is he healthy? Is he feeling good? Is he playing good? But, you got to start thinking about life after. And the Eagles have been doing it for a while with Jason Kelce, but then now they got to start doing it with Lane Johnson. And that kind of sucks because it's a great player. Great player. Best right tackle in football, one of the best offensive linemen, regardless of position in football. And he's not going to be easy to replace when ultimately you have to replace him.
Right. Kind of like Kelce. They keep drafting his replacement at center, and they end up playing other positions for the Eagles because Jason Kelce's been going nowhere fast. Might be the same with Mr. Johnson because Steen, the kid that they took in the 3rd round, who's in the competition for right guard, certainly played right tackle at Alabama, so he could step in there.
He actually played left tackle at Alabama, so
right. I think he played both.
But he's played right tackle to pass at Vanderbilt. He could play a bunch of different positions. It could be one of those situations where, you start him out at guard, kick him out to tackle. But you know what, Jody? They mentioned that years ago with Lane Johnson, but it was, they drafted him to be the left tackle for people that don't remember. But Jason Peters was still playing at a high level. So they said, well, let's start him at right tackle, then we'll move him over. And ultimately, he got so good at right tackle, and the position changed from the standpoint of, Lane's been playing so long. Back when he started, most of the good pass rushers were on. Gary Cobb and I were talking about this before Lane talked, and then he talked about it. It was interesting. Back when he started, most of the great pass rushers were on the weak side. So right defensive ends against left tackles. And that has shifted as the game has evolved. And you see all the guys right here. You have Hassan Reddick. He plays mainly on the left side over the right tackle. Von Miller, Micah Parsons, on and on and on. DeMarcus Lawrence, all the Cowboys. If you want to go back to DeMarcus Ware, a lot of them line up over Lane Johnson. and it's not, you don't have that weird sort of disconfiguration where all the good pass rushers are on one side. So they're like, let's just keep them there. So it's changed pretty quickly in the NFL. That's why yesterday I mentioned that yesterday on the show, Jody. 1990s. Forget about 1990s. The game's not this. Lane Johnson's been playing 11 years, and that's how drastically the game has changed in those 11 years.
And the best teams with the best attacks have guys who can switch from side to side on the pass rush, who can come at you from the left side or come at you from the right side. Eagles, that's why the Eagles have arguably the best offensive line. Go ahead, pick your side. We dare you to get by Lane Johnson. We dare you to get by Jordan Mailata. We'll be okay whichever direction you bring your best pass rusher. We think our tackle is going to be able to keep you out. I think that is a big reason why the Eagles have the best offensive line in all of football. All right, so Lane spoke, as did Landon Dickerson, a guy who plays on the other side, inside at the guard position. And as I just mentioned, a lot of people have the Eagles Pro Football Focus, a bunch of other respected outlets that are doing this preseason ranking stuff, have the Eagles as the best offensive line. And Lane is just another example of a guy who's came into the National Football League and was said, yeah, we're going to cross-train you, and you may end up somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened. He ended up at the right guard position for them, even though he was the first of those who were brought in to replace Travis, to replace Mr. Kelsey in the middle, and that opening just hasn't come just yet. I watched the video after it was posted yesterday. The thing that jumped out to me was, and he's always been a relaxed guy, coming in his coveralls when he was first drafted by the Eagles. He has been a guy that hasn't been taken back by the moment of making the transition from college football to the NFL. But he seems even more relaxed. He's a guy who seems very comfortable in his own skin. Did Landon Dickerson say anything yesterday that you thought shed some light on both where he's at in the Eagles offensive line at this stage?
No, Landon's pretty understated. One thing about Landon Dickerson, if you listen to Landon, you think he stinks because he's so hard on himself. He always says, there's so much to work on. Where do you need to get better? He ran down run blocking, pass blocking, screens, everything. You would think you're talking about the worst player in the world, and then you go to the film and he's just mauling people. And the scary part is he's got a lot of room to improve. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Kelsey heir apparent thing, but he wasn't the first. Isaac was the first. So they've been going all the way back to Isaac Seumalo. Isaac Seumalo was drafted to be the center, the heir apparent to be Jason Kelsey. Then it went to Landon Dickerson. Then it went to Cam Jurgens. And who knows, if Cam Jurgens settles down and plays well at right guard this season, it might turn into somebody else. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see, because I think Cam's a natural center and they like his athleticism. But you never know. If he takes to right guard, they might say, I want to move him, and they might go in a different direction. But yeah, I mean, they took a calculated gamble on Landon Dickerson from a health standpoint, tore his ACL, for those who don't know, in the 8 SEC championship game. So it was really late. And they weren't expecting him to be ready early in the season. All of a sudden, it was Brandon Brooks who got hurt, and they had to throw him in at right guard first. And he wasn't completely healthy. I remember his first play, he got run over, and we're like, "Oof, what's going? What this might not be pretty." And yeah, didn't take long, but it ultimately, then Isaac got hurt, and they moved him over to left guard, put Jack Driscoll at right guard, and that had more to do with Jack being more comfortable on the right side. All those dominoes, and he ends up at left guard. It's just a bit. Him and Mailata are so strong and so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Become so close towards in his wedding. Um, that's an impressive left side from a standpoint of pushing people around. I mean, they lead the league in pancakes, that left side of the Eagles' offensive line.
Right, and that's a stat that you can't necessarily look up. You got to be watching every single game and go, man, who's coming up off the ground? Yeah, he had no shot on that play. That is the Eagles' offensive line. And they showcased the running backs yesterday, the returning running backs yesterday with both Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell talking. Those guys, when you had a chance to watch last week, actually were leading in the reps. That they showed deference to the guys who were here previously over Rashad Penny and a Swift. They both, again, and you get your expected answers in preseason practice and just trying to get through it and everything else. But both of the guys just looked real comfortable for the upcoming season, that there wasn't any nervousness on either of those two guys, specifically Boston Scott, who plays the role that he plays, and his role is probably going to be similar this year. Would you take from anything that Boston Scott put forward yesterday?
Yeah, man, he's the leader of the room. It's so funny to think about, how long he's been here now. 2018, which was his rookie season, he got plucked off the Saints practice squad, and he's been here essentially ever since. Got cut once, but brought back early, and now he's just, he's one of those guys. There's an old adage, I heard it again about Boston Scott. It's been around in the NFL for a while. If you can't win with 53 Boston Scotts, but you can't win without one. You always need some, whether you want to call him a glue guy, whether you want to call him, a utility guy. I always bring up the baseball comparison, the Jim Schwartz comparison, the old school utility player. You see it in football. We talk about it all the time. Well, go sign so-and-so to be the fifth receiver, the Pro Bowl, whatever, or Leonard Floyd we talk about earlier this week. Go sign him to be the fifth defensive end. That's not how it works. You got to have utility guys. You got to have guys who cannot play, and then when they're asked to play, perform.
Right.
And that's been the definition of Boston Scott, as the New York Giants can tell you. You need him, he's there, and you brush him off and he performs. And it's important to have, and he's a big part. Now he's the leader of that room, which is kind of amazing. But ultimately I think it's going to be Swift or Penny. Swift and Penny. Maybe Kenny Gainwell has an outside chance, but we all know Penny's injury history. DeAndre Swift doesn't have the greatest injury history. They're going to need those two guys, and they're comfortable knowing they're probably going to produce when they're out there.
Did Boston Scott talk at all yesterday about the kickoff return rule change?
Yeah, he did. He called it dumb, like everybody else. It is dumb. Then he called himself. And, he basically said he doesn't like it, makes the game less entertaining, which I think we all agree with. But it's the rule. And then he just turned to, we got to deal with it. And we'll be able to deal with it. I do think, because we talked about pretty much all season, special teams was a weakness. Not when Boston took over the kickoff returns. He was good. 27 yards per kick. That's good. That's a good number. Now, it was only a portion of the season. It took way too long to pull that ripcord. But when they did, they were good on kickoff returns. He had a 66-yarder against, guess who? The Giants. He had a 50-something. It was 57, 58 against Dallas. He was good. It took too long to get there. And And now it's probably not going to matter that he's good at it because kickoffs have become even less relevant than they were before. So, unfortunately for him.
But he's already got his niche carved out with the Eagles. We know he's going to be here. Like you said, he's a glue guy, and every team needs their glue guy. So he's going to be in the mix at the running back position, and is the guy who's been here the longest. So that gives him a little gravitas as well. Kenny Gainwell, I know some people projected because he got a chance to play late in the season, was better in the postseason than he was at all during the regular season. Miles Sanders didn't help in the Super Bowl with a bad first play, so they decided they were going to lean on Gainwell even more. Yes, they went out and got two guys who are already established, more so than Kenny Gainwell, as running backs this year. You and I see this exactly the same. Those who continue to pound on, Jalen's going to get better. Eagles are going to throw the ball to the backs that much more this year. Yeah, maybe. I'll doubt it. Jalen Hurts like taking off rather than going to dump down mode for his running backs. Did Gainwell talk at all about the fact that, I can still catch the ball out of the backfield, and that he hopes it's more part of the Eagles offense this year?
No, I mean, Kenny, I talked about Landon being understated, Kenny even more so. But I think everybody knows Kenny is a good receiver. Well, when I say everybody in the organization, like there's no doubt that he can catch the football. The Eagles don't use that aspect. And not because of Kenny Gainwell. And it's more of a pump the brakes on DeAndre Swift. Yeah, DeAndre can catch the football. Yes, he's good at it. I don't think it's going to be that relevant to this particular offense. Same thing. But it's nice to have if you have to go to Marcus Mariota or, God forbid, Ian Book or Tanner McKee. It's nice to have. But I don't think it's as relevant as like the Chargers with Austin Eckler. I think if Kenny Gainwell was in a different offense, he'd already be catching 60 balls a year. That's how good of a receiver he is. But I don't think it's going to be as relevant in this offense.
You and I see that one exactly the same. He's Mac, I'm Mac. That makes it Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We got two good guests coming your way a little bit later on. Chris Franklin from NJ.com will jump in with us. But first things first, we're headed down the shore to talk to our guy Mike Gill from ESPN's 97.3 Sports Bash Show. Mike Gill, Wednesday, here with us on Birds 365 next.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick,